Attendance, please.
Jason Brandt.
Here.
John Larkin. Allison Pinkett Floyd. Kristen Osmundstad Walsh.
Here.
Virginia Carlson.
Here.
Ken Marshall.
Here.
Sue Wiggins.
Here.
Do we have any public presentation tonight to the board? Receive anything in advance? Okay. Next is today's interesting. We're going to be switching off some of our board meetings members today. So,
Does this come out of here? On behalf of the library, we want to thank those trustees that have served so tirelessly in these last few years. We have a few tokens. As you know, we're on this budget, so they're tokens. We're going to start with Virginia Carlson. Jenny, may you be proud of the work you have done, the person you are, and the difference you have made. Jenny has been a trustee on the Helen Plum Library Board from May 2005 to June 2021, and we thank you. I was going to add just a comment or two. We have really benefited from your leadership in the community, your commitment to high standards, and asking us to be accountable, asking those questions that you wanted answers for, and your time and dedication in all these years serving on the board, including your term as president, or your terms as president. So on behalf of Helen Plum Library, the admin team, and the staff, we thank you. And I would add, on behalf of the community, thank you. And Jason, may you also be proud of the work you have done, the person you are, and the difference you have made in the community. Jason served on the Helen Plum Library Board of Trustees from June 2011 through June 2021. That's 10 years and I think 2 terms as the president. And I have to add also, I have really admired your listening approach to leadership. And it's become evident that I think that's one of the qualities that you have really, really exercised here, and it's been really needed over the last 10 years. I think also you've demonstrated quiet confidence in serving as president of the board. And especially through these curveballs, the building project that took detours and the pandemic that caught us all by surprise. So your quiet, confident, calm, listening presence has been a treasure, and we thank you. John Larkin's not here, but I would add that we have the same comment for John, and he's also served for 10 years on the board. And I do want to publicly say, John has brought to us this incredible experience with facilities management and building projects, and a commitment and energy for moving forward. And we are extraordinarily appreciative. So again, on behalf of the entire Plum Library team, we thank you for your service. We hope that you will stay involved with the library. Thank you.
All right, our next step here is to swear in our new trustees.
Hi. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, name, solemnly swear to affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Library Trustee according to the best of my ability. Thank you. Welcome to the board.
Okay, we're going to do some Yep, we're going to do some seat swapping.
While we're doing this, I want to add my personal thanks to Jason for the leadership he's shown. I've only been on the board for 2 years, but he's had the patience and the ability to lead us through troubled times. I followed this before I came on the board. Since I've been on the board, I really appreciate the job that he did and where he's led us to so far.
Are we ready? Yeah,
Well, we were hoping that Allison would be here.
not arrived yet.
Not arrived yet. I know she's on her way. Could we take an intermission,
5 minutes?
a 5-minute intermission?
Person in the control booth. Was that a thumbs up?
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are back in session with the library meeting June 9th. Next on the agenda is to elect the board secretary as president pro tem for the purpose of conducting the election of officers. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion to elect the board secretary as president pro tem for the purpose of conducting the election of officers.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Okay. Now can I have a motion to elect the Board of Trustees officers?
Start with the president.
Yes. First, we will be electing the president.
I move that we elect the Board of Trustees officers in the following order: President, Vice President, Treasurer, and Secretary.
Second?
Second, third, whatever.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so we're going to start with the president. Just a reminder to use your microphone so it's easier for those viewing in person and virtually to hear. This meeting is streaming live and being recorded to be posted on the Helen Plum website. First, we'll take nominations for president. And according to our bylaws, I'll just read what the description says. The president will pre-approve board meeting agendas, preside at all meetings of the board, authorize calls for any special meetings, appoint all committees, execute all documents authorized by the board, serve as executive officer of the board, be an ex officio member of all committees, and serve as official spokesperson for the board. Do I have any nominations for president?
I will nominate Allison Pinkett Floyd. I'm sure that she's not here tonight for a legitimate reason, traffic jam, or hopefully not illness, because she's a regular attendee. She's been on the board for several terms. I've served with her for 2 years now, and I know that she's even-tempered. She's smart. She knows how to handle crises when they come up. She was involved in a couple of committees that I've been on the last couple of years, and I think that she has the patience, the confidence, and the personality to be a good president for the board, especially in dealing with the community in general, dealing with other community organizations, and I think she'd be a good face of the board for the public and for other governmental entities in Lombard.
I would agree with that, and I have personally spoken with Allison, and in her absence, I know we can't formally accept her nomination, as I understand, just speaking with Claudia.
I think you can accept
We
the
can.
nomination.
Okay,
She'll have to confirm that she's willing to.
okay, okay. But I've spoken with her on several occasions, including via text just yesterday, and she did indicate to me that she was willing to serve, and I think she would be a great leader for the board for all the reasons that Ken has already articulated. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
You have to ask if there's any more nominations.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. This is my first time. Thank you for your patience. Do I have any more nominations for president of the board? Okay, and we do need to do a roll call vote for this. So Angelica,
Kristen Osmond Walsh,
yes.
Allison Pinkett Floyd, Ken Marshall,
Yes.
Sue Wiggins,
Yes.
Julie Kowalski Schmidt,
Yes.
Kelly Ann Sims,
Yes.
Jennifer Erickson.
Yes.
Motion passes. So the process should, in contacting her and,
No, I would move at this point to the vice president.
yes. Is there anything that we need to do to follow up with her, or?
My microphone is off. Sorry, my microphone is off. Thank you. No, move to the vice president. You're going to
Okay.
take your nominations, your seconds, and then have your discussion. If there's
Okay.
any additional nominations, just continue as you just
Okay.
did. Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to nominations for vice president. And per our bylaws, the description of the duties for vice president are brief. In the absence or disability of the president, or a vacancy in that office, the vice president will assume the duties and functions of the president. Do we have nominations for vice president? I would like to nominate Ken Marshall. Ken Marshall.
I'll second.
Are there other, actually,
discussion
Ken,
you wanna
would you
have?
like to accept the nomination?
Yes, I will do so. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other nominations for vice president? Okay. We need a roll call vote?
Kristen Osmond Walsh,
Yes.
Allison Pinkett Floyd, Ken Marshall,
Yes.
Sue Wiggins,
Yes.
Julie Kowalski Schmidt,
Yes.
Kelly Ann Simmons,
Yes.
Jennifer Erickson.
Yes.
Okay. Ken is nominated as the vice president. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He's elected.
Elected, I'm sorry.
Hey,
Thank you.
he was nominated.
He was nominated, now he's elected.
Does that mean a salary increase?
Yes, yes, we will double your salary.
Double my salary.
And be ready to take over the meeting here
That's
at
right.
the conclusion of the
Get ready,
election of
Ken.
officers.
I will willingly hand this over to you. Okay, next we will take nominations for secretary per our bylaws. The secretary will issue notices of all regular and special meetings, see that minutes of all board meetings are taken, and recommend and sign official library correspondence. The secretary acts as the library's local election official and certifies ordinances and other legal documents as required. Just to note, the library administration actually prepares agendas, minutes, et cetera, and the secretary reviews, approves, and verifies by signature as needed. Do I have any nominations for the role of secretary?
I have not yet discussed this with her, but I would nominate Julie Kowalski Schmidt. And the reason I do that is that I know she's been active on the Library Board Foundation, and she's done a tremendous job there. And I think that, when she says she's going to do something, she gets it done. She's reliable, and She does things right, and I think that she would be an excellent officer and an excellent addition to the officers of the board. Hope I haven't embarrassed you, Julie, because I know I didn't talk to you about it.
Unexpected,
But
thank you.
You accept?
I was going to nominate you again, Kristen.
Oh.
But, are you not interested, or how does this work?
You should accept or not as you wish.
I appreciate the nomination, but I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, as being a new person on the board.
Well, I mean, I will tell you, it probably sounds more intimidating than it is. I mean, and I'm not trying to convince you, but just, to clarify, Angelica really does a lot of the preparation, and the secretary really signs off the agendas she puts together and posts them, the minutes she takes, and I review them and sign them and verify them. So it's really more of an oversight role than an actual doing all the work role. So if that makes you feel more comfortable, but if you don't feel that you want to step into that, I can completely understand it. So it should be up to you if you want to take that on.
I can accept, thank you.
You do need a second still.
Oh, second. I'm sorry. I'll second.
I accept, thank you.
Oh, Kristen, are you tired of being secretary? You don't want to go anymore?
I'm happy to let someone take the reins, honestly, if Julie is interested. Yeah.
I would like to clarify that my nomination of Julie has absolutely no reflection on the abilities of Kristen. I think she's done a tremendous job, and one of the only reasons that I did that really is to have one of the new trustees be an officer in the board and someone that I know is reliable, I know as good as Kristen is. And if she wants to stay as secretary, I don't know if it's within the Robert's Rules of Order, but I will also nominate her for the position if she wants to stay.
No, you know what? I think it's great to mix things up, and I really thank you, but I am not at all, I'm completely comfortable having someone else step into the role, and I think it's great to have new blood, and if Julie is interested, I'm happy to have her nominated and accept the role, if elected. Any other nominations? No? Okay, so we need a roll call vote.
Kristen Osmondstad Walsh,
Yes.
Allison Pinkett Floyd, Ken Marshall,
Yes.
Sue Wiggins,
Yes.
Julie Kowalski Schmidt,
Yes.
Kelly Ann Sims,
Yes.
Jennifer Erickson.
Yes.
Motion passes, carries. You have been elected as Secretary, Julie. Congratulations. Okay, now we move on to Treasurer. Per the bylaws, the Treasurer has custody of all library funds, including income and special funds, and will keep a separate record thereof and arrange for a deposit of all such funds in financial institutions approved by the Board. The Treasurer will be bonded or insured in an amount as is required by statute. The Treasurer will present monthly and annual financial reports to the Board. And again, the library administration in this role as well actually handles the accounting and presents financial reports to the Board. So it's really more of an oversight capacity. Do I have any nominations for Treasurer?
Trustee Ken or not?
I'm already the vice president.
That's right, I forgot.
Well, I'm a little reluctant to step forward here because I don't know the financial experience of any of the new trustees. I was familiar with Julie's work on the foundation, that's why I nominated her. But I do know that Kristen has a good work ethic, so if she's willing to switch jobs, I'll nominate Kristen Armstead Walsh to be the new treasurer.
I'll accept that role.
I'll second.
Okay, any other nominations? Okay, given no other nominations, we'll have a vote. We need a roll call.
Kristen Osmond Walsh,
Yes.
Allison Pinkett Floyd, Ken Marshall,
Yes.
Sue Wiggins,
Yes.
Julie Kowalski Schmidt,
Yes.
Kelly Ann Sims,
Yes.
Jennifer Erickson.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. Kristen Osmond Walsh is elected the secretary.
Treasurer.
Sorry, treasurer. I'm still thinking about myself in my old role. Okay.
Swap, you can go ahead.
No, I think actually it's nice to move on to something different. I think the election of officers is concluded, yes?
Yeah.
Our new board president, since she is not here, our vice president, in the absence of her being here, assumes leadership per our bylaws.
Okay.
So Ken gets to move into that role. Yes?
And do you want to switch seats? And
Yes, I would love to switch seats, Ken. I would welcome the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
You bet. Enjoy.
Well, I was giving some thought to starting with the joke, but it looks like a tough room, so I'll not do that. Okay, I guess we'll be moving on down the agenda now. And the next item is for the adoption of the agenda. And we're pretty much through that agenda now.
Well, I move for the approval of the agenda.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and to adopt the agenda. The motion has been seconded. So can we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. And now we're moving on to item 10, which is the action item approval of the consent agenda items. And the consent agenda items have been laid out. They pretty much include the balance sheet for the, well, I'm sorry, let me back up here. So regular board meeting minutes of May 12, 2021, and the closed session meeting minutes of May 12, 2021. So I think I'll split this in half. Will somebody give me a motion to adopt the regular board meeting minutes from May 12, 2021, and the closed session meeting minutes from May 12, 2021?
Well, can we generally just approve all the consent items?
Well, all right, then I guess I can do that. I was going to give people a chance to comment on the check register, the cash investments report, the revenue expenditure, and the balance sheet, but I guess I can do that now. So I'll revise my request, and it'll be a motion to adopt all of the items on the consent agenda, and then once we have the motion in a second, we'll open it up for discussion.
I move for the approval of the consent agenda items.
Second?
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion on any of the items? Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote on the consent agenda items. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the consent agenda item, a motion is carried. Now we'll move into committee reports. The audit committee, I think, was that John Larkin's committee?
Yes.
Okay, well, we don't have a report from the audit committee. The director relations committee?
We did not meet and no report.
Okay. And finally, the policy and bylaws committee.
That was Allison.
Okay, and I'm on that committee, and no, we don't have anything to report new. So now we move on to unfinished business. I don't believe there is any unfinished business. So the next item is the new business. The action item is the approval of the 2021-2022 working budget. And so if I can have a motion to approve that in a second, then we will go into discussion. I have some questions about the budget that I'd like to ask, and I imagine maybe some other board members do too.
I move for the approval of the 2021-2022 working budget.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Now the floor is open for discussion on the proposed 2021 budget. Well, I have a couple of questions. The 611 notes, this is page 1 of the working budget notes. It says the fiscal year 2021 included a 27th paycheck. Every 10 or 12 years, extra annual day and accumulation of leap year is aligned for a 27th pay period. Now, I understand that. It says this occurred in the calendar year 2020, and we budgeted for it in fiscal 2021, but it will correspond with our fiscal 2021-22 budget year, so we are carrying it over. I'm not sure I understand that because it occurs every 10 or 12 years, and yet we're doing it 2 years in a row, so I'm
No,
missing something.
we thought that it would hit in 2020, 2021. And the truth of the matter is, had it been one day earlier, it would have been on June 30th, and it would have been in this fiscal year budget. It actually occurs on July 1st. So we're one day into the new fiscal year budget. And we projected this out. We looked at it in 2020. And then in 2020, 2021, the third paycheck came in July and December. And frankly, we thought June because it's rarely 6 months later, and that was an error by one day. So if you look at your cash and investment reports or your balance sheet, that money that was budgeted in 2020, 2021 was not spent. So we're carrying it over. It will end up in surplus. We are. It was budgeted last year. We did not need it last year. We need it this year. And the third paychecks in the 2021-22 fiscal year will fall in July, December, and June, which is what we thought we had this year.
Okay, so in essence, we're just moving it forward a year. We thought it was going to be this year, but it's next year instead. Okay, that explains it.
And frankly, I think is probably not a mistake we'd make again, except in 10 or 12 years we potentially could. But it's rare that you ever see a 6-month break, January, February, March, April, May, June, without a third paycheck. It's usually every 6 months. So that's our error. But it's, again, not spent money. It's moved forward. And it's literally one day. It's the first day of the fiscal year. If it had been a leap year, maybe. So it's waiting to be moved into surplus and then to be allocated this year, and then you won't see the 27th paycheck for quite some time.
Okay, and I notice also on that page, you're reserving for new hires 2 full-time positions at the midpoint librarian level and 2 part-time positions at the library associate level. When are those going to be filled, do you think?
We don't necessarily know, Ken, and we opted to say, the last half of the upcoming fiscal year, so sometime between January and June. And we don't even particularly know exactly which positions, but I can give you an example of some of the discussion. We have our creative space, which is actually going to have a new name. And we have the teen space, and right now we have a part-time teen librarian. Those are 2 spaces in the new building where we anticipate that having the staff member on board during planning, program planning, equipment that's going to go into that creative space, that we may need those hires sooner. Same is possibly true with the anticipation of getting collections ready to move. So those are positions that we anticipate the possibility of needing, and we want to budget for them. But the budget for that will be coming out of the operating expenses for the new building, not part of the operating expenses. I think we've had this discussion before, but when our accountant looks at the taxes that we will receive in a given year, consistently since the referendum passed, she's applied a formula that says, in that referendum, had it not passed, this is your operating fund money that you would have. And we have budgeted to that level every year for 4 years, and we continue to do so. So the note there is, look, this is really hiring for the new building. It should come out of that operating fund. So it's allocated from that percentage that's factored or prorated out of the tax receipts we expect to get. I hope that makes sense. But
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just saw that you were budgeting for 6 months, and I assumed the hire wasn't imminent because we would.
no, not imminent, and it's possible it would be 3 people in March or April as opposed to 2 in January. We just wanted to make sure we set aside some funding. The other thing I would tell you, we don't have space in the current building to have a lot of staff added. So it's not something we can't add a tremendous number of staff, even in the new building, but we can't anticipate adding too many because we won't have a place to have them be seated or work. So I think that is a reasonable set aside to make sure we've got something in the salary budget to be ready.
Okay. And if anybody else, I've got a few more questions. If anybody else wants to break in, feel free. Let me know.
I would just add, too, we did spend in our new trustee orientation, we went over this in pretty good detail. Not that you don't have questions, because there's a lot here to absorb, but I just want to reassure you that we spent some time on this so that nobody's a complete novice looking at this for the first time or without having spent some time looking at it.
Okay. My next, I guess, comment is on about the building contents insurance. We've increased the umbrella liability policy from $1 million to $5 million,
Yes.
which I assume you indicate here is kind of in line for a type of organization that we are.
Yes.
And yeah, I was going to comment, 1 million seemed a little light.
That's
considering-
exactly what we thought. We were actually reviewing the liability insurance for the construction site, and our insurance agent opted to give us a review. Michelle Bauman and I sat through that, and we looked at it and said that doesn't seem adequate. And it had been 20 years since we'd increased that. So we asked, for a budget, employee base this size, an organization this size, what's typical or usual or recommended? And that cost of insurance is about $500 per million. So the increase you see there, about 2,000 of it. Michelle Bauman, correct me if I'm wrong, is for that increase in liability. The cybersecurity, we had 50,000 in coverage. I think we increased that to 100,000, and that's not a huge increase in the liability. I mean, in the insurance costs, it's several $100s. The other is the surety bond for the treasurer, which I think was omitted from last year's budget. I'm not entirely sure, but it's in this year's budget and should have been in last year's as well. We paid it. Don't worry. Don't worry, treasurer. At any rate.
In this day and age, I think $5 million is certainly something to have, because all you need is one terrible accident.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
We'll be on street corners asking
Yeah.
for money for people.
Well, and that is the umbrella coverage. There's various categories of liability insurance where we have $1 million here, $1 million here, $1 million here. That umbrella coverage can apply to any of those categories. So if you had an instance where you needed that liability coverage for a specific, that's why it's called umbrella, because it goes over all the other liability limits. So I think it's wise, and I think it's probably more in keeping with what we would need in 2021 and 2022 versus 10 or 20 years ago.
Okay. Without dragging this on too much longer, I do have a couple more questions. The computer maintenance total, I noticed, went from, on page 9 of the budget, went from $7,500 to, from $57,500 to $73,903. That seems to be a fairly significant jump. So I'm wondering, what the background of that is. Should we be looking for a different computer maintenance company, perhaps, or a vendor in that regard? I mean, that seems like that's over a 50% jump.
I'm gonna call on Alex, who's more than ready, I think, to add some comments on that category. We've spent a lot of time, but I will assure you that he's probably going to be more detailed and accurate than I am in the specifics.
Okay.
Yes, the computer maintenance section of that budget line is not a single vendor. That basically is all of our subscription services related to technology for the entire library. And as we're preparing to move into the new building, some of the things that we're starting to budget for are improved backup systems for the library servers, patch management software that will allow us to ensure that all of our computers are receiving antivirus updates, Windows updates, security patches on a timely basis. Right now, a lot of that is work that staff have to do manually, and by using software to handle some of those tasks, it will allow us to do more with a smaller staff. So that's allowing us to, rather than having to hire right now, purchase better tools to handle those.
Okay, so I guess that answered my question. I thought it might be just payment to one company, but you're saying it's various vendors involved in various different tasks. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There are probably 20 or so different individual categories within that budget. For the budget that goes to the board, that's a summary of the total amount. I would be happy to share the specific worksheet with anyone that's interested.
Alex, Sue just brought up a good point here, because the line right below that is website design and development, hosting and maintenance fee. And we had the one-time expense of design and development in the prior budget, but the maintenance fee for that is now part of the computer maintenance total, right, Alex?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So part of what you see in the line below that 13.5, that 13.5 was all combined when we had a new website under development, but there is an annual maintenance fee for that website that's part of the 73, in addition to everything Alex just mentioned.
Okay, so the 13.5 is rolled into the 57.5?
Well, the 13.5 is not that full amount because we don't have to do the design, just the maintenance. So part of it.
I should also point out that this budget line typically comes in substantially under budget every year. When I prepare this for the board, we want to present the maximum amount that it possibly could be to ensure that we have the funding to operate at the level that we would like to throughout the year. This past year, we had budgeted $109,000 in total for that 836 line. And as of today, we're sitting at about $89,000. So we typically come in quite a bit under budget, but we want to prepare for the maximum that it could cost, and then seek to keep the actual cost as low as possible throughout the year.
And that's also a good point, Alex, because in that 836 line, the total has gone from 109 budgeted last year to 106,900 this year. So it's actually, the total line is down a few thousand.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to be pedantic here, but this is a once-a-year budget review.
Absolutely, and it's important.
Okay.
I had a question about the special reserve fund. I was on the previous page talking about estimating expenses between $300,000 and $500,000, depending on the technology that will be offered in the new creative space. Could you just share a little bit more about that variance and like what that technology offered might change that?
I can give you even a little background on this. That special reserve by ordinance, and certainly we will make that ordinance available to you. The board has said these funds may be used for the following sorts of things. And I'll give you another example outside of technology. It includes technology, but it also includes, like if there was some significant maintenance repair we needed. We had, I think, a AC outage that required a new cooling tower for, I want to say $250,000. It's been several years. So that special reserve is money designated for a specific set of things. And when we were in the process of planning for the new building, the cost of technology in the new building, and there will be more computers for the public, there will be the creative space computers, and a wealth of additional features available in some of the meeting rooms that are going to really bring us into the 21st century. But as we talked through that, the question was, should this be part of the building project versus the technology? And I think at one point it was in the new building, and then it was out, and then it was back and forth. And what you see, I think, in the prior year is $1 million in that fund. And what we chose to do, and that could have been used for technology, but what we chose to do was split that and say $500,000 for technology, so everybody, the board, the management, are aware that we are are planning to use some of that for technology in the new building. And the best justification or reasoning I heard that made sense for me, this actually came from our architect because they've worked with libraries and other organizations that have done the technology as part of the building project. But his comment was oftentimes you're funding at a bond term of 20 years, and technology lifespan is maybe 5 to 7 years. So you really don't want that in the funding for something that you're paying finance charges for 15 or 20 years. So that's the reason that it's in that special reserve, and the reason we designated that as a specific line item on this budget is to be completely transparent about our intent to fund the technology in the new building with that special reserve fund. And I would also add, I don't have these numbers with me, but through these last 4 years, as Alex and his predecessor have looked at replacement cycles, where they could wait longer, they did. So the surplus from unspent technology from the technology lines has rolled right into special reserve. With the intent to use that fund for the new building. So I hope that answers your question.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank
and sorry
you.
to interrupt you, Ken. I don't know if you had other questions.
No, that's fine. I do have a couple more, and I see Allison has arrived, so let me interrupt well, I'll tell you what, let me finish my questions, and then I'll turn to Allison, see
if she accepts her nomination and election.
Takes me off the hot seat and accepts the nomination and takes over. Yeah, so a couple more questions. I'm looking at page 10 now, section 841. It says, for patron use of Visa and MasterCard, $2,000. I'm not sure.
I think that's our processing fees, but boy, management team, correct me if I'm wrong. Like that's the cost we have to actually
Sorry,
offer.
what was the budget line?
It's the line 841. Do you have this budget with you, Alex? Do you want me to?
I have the technology budget. 841 is not part of that.
It's bank card charges or Michelle Bauman.
Yeah, that is for the patrons that use the credit cards.
Just like there's a service charge to the retail company or the restaurant when you use a credit card to pay, they have to pay a percentage. That's our share of the fees we have to pay for the convenience of allowing patrons to use a credit card.
Use a credit card for what?
Oh, to pay.
For fines, lost items?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, I wondered what paid, but we're paying $2,000 for
No,
people using.
I lost this book. I left it on the airplane. My replacement cost is $25. And by the way, credit cards can be used for paying for printouts when all things are working well. So you can use it for more than just payment of fines and fees.
Okay, I'll leave that to your discretion. It just seems to me paying $2,000 to let people use maybe $1,000 worth of credit cards a year is a little bit, but that's a service we
It's
provide.
probably substantially more than that in a non-pandemic year. So, or I don't know, Michelle Bauman, if that's any additional fees we have to pay for our business cards.
Can I get back to him next tomorrow?
Yeah.
Sure, it's okay. I mean, it's not a gigantic.
Not a budget breaker.
Right. Okay, now I'm down to my last couple of items before I'll pass the baton to Allison, so to speak. Building repairs, we're budgeting $50,000 for building repairs. Do we really anticipate that much, or that's just be safe rather than sorry type situation?
Ken, I can't honestly say that I feel safe with $50,000 knowing the condition of HVAC, but what I can tell you is if it's more than $50,000, we will be back before the board saying we need special reserves for a new cooling tower or whatever. I use that example because it happened, but you know our HVAC is on its last leg, so that's really, we hope that we don't need that at all or very little of it. And if we have something catastrophic, then we're going to have to revisit where we get funding from special reserves. So that amount is I don't want to say it's not a cushion, but it's our best guess at a minor catastrophic repair that might be needed, not a major. So
we're crossing our fingers on the building, which we have been for years, actually.
Well, and frankly, that's the amount we've carried consistently in the budget for that on reserve. And frankly, most years, it's an amount that rolls into special reserve because we haven't used it. And I hope it stays that way.
Couple more to go. Building and contents insurance, Utica National Insurance Company, previous year $9,200, this year $13,501.
Just tell me the page, because isn't that the
I'm sorry,
insurance we
it's
just
page-
talked
page
about?
12.
Is that the insurance we just talked about?
No, this is Utica National Insurance for building and contents insurance. It jumped from 9,200 to 1,300, to 13,000 rather. It's page 12, about
Yeah.
10 lines down. You see that there?
That's not collections, that's,
Yeah.
Page 12, yeah, 861.
yeah,
building
that is
con-
what we talked about.
Yeah, we just talked about that. That's the liability, the umbrella.
Oh, okay, that's as opposed to.
Yeah.
We'll jump down to professional services, 863. I see a number of professional fees there, but I don't see any architect fees. Are we not anticipating any more?
Oh, we will have plenty of architectural fees. They come out of the building fund, the capital building fund, not the operating budget.
I thought that might be the case, but I wanted to confirm
Yes.
that. And finally, my last question on this is line 910, Travelers Nolan Agency for Workers' Comp Insurance. This last year we paid $5,200. This year we're paying $11,683, over 100% increase. Should we have shopped that around, or is that the new?
No, and again, I'm going to ask Michelle Baumann to insert herself if I get this incorrect, but the insurance company, and I forgot who it is. Thank you. Travelers Insurance does an annual audit, and they take a look at the employees, and there are certain classes of employees where they charge more, and they look at the rates that those employees make. For example, someone working in maintenance or facilities is maybe more likely to have an accident or injury on the job, so the rate for that employee would be higher. And I believe there was probably an increase this past year that either they had not we had not budgeted for, and I don't know if they didn't communicate it, but it's really bringing our budget into line with what their audit tells them we should be paying. I think it's fair. And Michelle Baumann, please.
We actually were under budget last year. We had 5,200, but they charged us, I think it was close to 10,000, because after they did the audit, it was after the budget was approved, and they checked our audit and our payroll, and said, oh, we undercharged you. So we looked at it this year and spoke to them, and this is the accurate number for this year.
Have we had any workers' compensation claims over the last year? Okay.
That has not affected this. It might.
It's not factored into this budget yet.
First time at workers' comp.
Yeah.
Okay.
May affect next year, we don't know.
But really, it's bringing our budget in line with the expenses we incurred even in this fiscal year. I know a couple of you noticed that, and it's I think one of the few budget lines where we were over, and it's not a significant amount of money, but it's a pretty high percentage over budget on that particular line, where we're under on almost everything else. But that's why, again, we're cleaning up the budget in line with what the expenses are.
The year prior to last, did we pay more than 5? Like, did
that's
it
a good
double
question.
last year, or were we?
We would have to
under
get
audit
back
the
to you
whole
on
time?
that. We can get back to you. I hope it's not something that will hold up the budget, but we can certainly get you an answer.
Okay, and my absolute final comment, I promise. Library fund revenue over expenditures. I see last year with all this money we're talking about, we finished $101 revenue over expenditures, and next year we're slated to finish $75 in the black. So after all this, we're going to come out $75 ahead?
Well, one thing I would encourage you to do is look back at the financial reports in this package, because you're going to come out way ahead of that 101 because so much of the budgets were not fully spent, and particularly in this pandemic year. We're underspent in many categories that will roll into special reserve. This is to assure that we have accounted for all the expenses that we know we would have. We would happily move that $75 someplace and come out at zero, so it's a perfectly balanced budget. But in the end, it's highly likely we won't spend in all these categories to the level that they're budgeted, and historically we have not. And that's where that surplus money goes to in the special reserves every year.
I was going to say, with that $75, you better not show up in a new Maserati or something.
I don't get it. I mean, I don't get that money, so the special reserve fund does.
Well, now, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, but it's a good point, because I think you're looking at these budget levels, and I would ask each of you to, particularly after we get through June and we're at the end of the fiscal year, and for the benefit of our new trustees and for those of you that don't think about this that often, the numbers in the middle, the actual receipts, you probably won't see those until September, because that accrual budget processing happens. And that's where our accountant takes a look at all this and realigns the expenses based on the year they were incurred. And I'm going to give you just one example, and please don't ask me to give you too many more because we'll be here for hours. And it's an illustrative example. Take a license, whether it's a database resource or something that Alex might need where we pay the annual fee once a year. For many of those licenses, they run concurrent with our fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. We might pay that bill on June 22nd, and it ends up in this fiscal year budget, but the accountant will accrue on an accrual basis, slide that into the year where that expense applies, if you will. And the same applies for if we paid it in June of last year, it'll get moved into this. So there are minor adjustments that minor or major, but that happen over time to align those expenses that we incurred and paid and you saw in a financial report, in a board report, with the actual fiscal year where they incurred. I would also encourage you not to get too concerned about that, because over time you could look at the last 5 years' budgets, the expenses total them up for 5 years, the income total it up for 5 years. That movement doesn't change expenses incurred or money received, your debits or credits. It just realigns them with a fiscal year. And that takes a little bit of time after the close of the books in June. Michelle Baumann, anything to add? Thank you.
Okay, I think unless there are any more questions.
Quick question.
Okay.
And this is small potatoes money-wise, but under professional services, the accounting firm from 6 to 10, is the scope of their services expanding? Or are we switching firms?
We are adding in there some, now that Jamie Recklin is done with her bond issue, he's been advising us, and that's been part of the bond process. We want to include a little bit of revenue or of expense money in the budget to bring him back when it comes time to do the levy, and we want to do those 5-year projections to assist with that. So we're beefing that up a little bit in order to account for that, because we've really benefited, I think, from his expertise and want to continue to have him here, particularly when it's time to pass those levies.
Sounds good.
Any other questions? Well, since the motion is already on the floor and it's been seconded, I'll call for a vote on whether to accept the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. And I think that's a roll call vote, is it not?
Absolutely.
Okay, so could we have a roll call on that, please?
Kristen Osmondstad-Walsh,
Yes.
Allison Pinkett-Floyd,
Yes.
Ken Marshall,
Yes.
Sue Wiggins,
Yes.
Julie Kowalski-Schmidt,
Yes.
Kelly Ann Sims,
Yes.
Jennifer Erickson.
Yes.
Okay, and now my duty is to ask Allison Pinkett-Floyd to first advise her to her horror that she's been elected while she was absent as president of the board. And I'm supposed to ask her if she will accept that, but now that I have a taste of power, I don't want to give it up. I'm not going to. No, seriously. Allison, you were elected. You had indicated to several board members that you were willing to accept the presidency if you were elected. And so we went ahead in your absence, and after waiting a little while, obviously you were unavoidably detained, and you were nominated. The nomination was second, and you were elected president. So do you accept the election?
I do. Thank you.
Now, you and I have to change seats.
Oh,
Do you want to know who the other officers are?
Sure, I would love the update. Do we have to change seats right now, Ken?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to hit every seat before we enter the meeting. No, I guess we don't have to do that for the rest of it. Okay, the new vice president is myself. The new secretary is Julie. And the new treasurer is Kristen. So Kristen swapped offices, and Julie is newly elected to the
Yes,
office.
I was the former treasurer, so got it. Thank you.
And now, where we are on the agenda, we're down to section 14, which is communications. And now, it's your show.
Okay. So our current secretary is Julie, but I don't know if you've had a chance to find if there are any communications.
I haven't.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Claudia, is there any communications?
No, none from us unless Sue has something from the public to share at this meeting at this time. And just for benefit of the new trustees, communications on the agenda, anything that's gone to the board, the secretary, if it's a letter, a thank you, whatever would be read out. And if it's a communication that's asked to be part of public comment, that would be earlier in the agenda. And then if the library has received any particular communications, this is the time on the agenda where we would share those. And we haven't, and often we don't, but sometimes we
But
do.
just for Julie, so you know, since I was secretary, it's rare that it would come through the secretary's box.
Okay,
I think
right.
oftentimes Sue would get them, but occasionally I would read out something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the library director's report.
I wanted to take just a minute to introduce the management team that's here to the new trustees. And so I'm going to ask if each of them might stand and be recognized. I'm going to start at the back. Michelle Bauman is our business office manager, and she's also our HR coordinator. And those are two extraordinarily important jobs. And given the pandemic year, it's been an incredible effort on her part. So thank you, Michelle Bauman. Michelle Kilty is our adult services manager. Christy Leslie is our marketing manager. Ann Luzanecki is our assistant director. She replaced me. I also asked Ann if she would take a minute and at least give you the name of our youth services manager who will be starting later this month.
Hi there. So Tabitha Anderson will be taking over as Youth Services Manager on June 21st, and I am delighted. She's an incredibly professional person and has worked in youth services for a good 10 years. But I've known her through the Lacona Youth Services Section Board, and I found her very wonderful to work with, so I couldn't be happier.
I would add, when I was on the Lacona Board for Youth Services, I also worked with Tabitha, and in that time, at some point there, she moved to Lombard, and Ann has already had some patrons come in very excited about the fact that she's going to be working in the Helen Plum Library as the Youth Services Manager.
Where was she at before?
Most recently, Elgin, and she's also been at Barrington, and Lyle. That was Barrington. Okay. So,
We're pretty lucky.
yeah, I think you'll be delighted. And Alex Vancina is our, I want to say IT and Technical Services Manager. Please stay tuned because we're going to probably have a different name for those two departments here in the next month or two combined. Stay tuned. Not a change in work that they do, but probably a more current nomenclature, if you will. And Angelica Brenzel, you probably have met via email. If not, she is the executive assistant, administrative assistant, and she's wonderful. And not here today is Phil, our facilities manager. Thank you, Lucas, but I'm thinking, have I missed anybody? Thank you, Michelle. I knew that. I knew. I was sitting there going, Phil Lucas is our facilities manager, and he actually, through the tuition part of the budget at one point in the past, went through the COD program and has learned so much, and frankly has been invaluable. I think he's looking forward to the new building and so much more modernization of all that. But the monitors, our security monitors, also report to Phil. So he's frontline on a lot of the patron incidences. So it's much more than facilities. It's facilities and security, and he's really a treasure. Michelle Peterson is our patron services manager. That's the front desk in the lobby. She has the largest staff reporting to her because all of the paging team, which are our shelvers, and all of the patron-facing staff that you see when you first walk into the building report to her. She's usually at these board meetings, so you will meet her soon, but that's the management team. I would also add on your next orientation, we will walk around to some of these departments, and hopefully most of the managers will be there, and you can meet them in their element, so to speak. So thank you all, and thanks for being here tonight. Then I have just a couple of updates.
Excuse me, Claudia, before you start, I would like to say that I really appreciate the work you and the staff have done through the, for the umpteenth time, the phrase unprecedented times comes to mind, but the challenges of of COVID, some other challenges, and then getting ready for the new building. And I think you folks have handled it so well. I'm in awe. I mean, before I got involved in the library several years ago with the referendum and that, you go to the library, you take a book out, you go home. That's it. I had no idea what all that went into. I mean, that was obviously simplistic, but I wasn't that naive. But I had no idea just how big of a staff was involved and how much had to be done by all the individual people, the managers down to the bookshelvers. And it just amazes me that you've handled everything that's been thrown at you. You've thrown it right back, and you've done the job. So I really appreciate that. And I think I'm not being presumptuous in speaking for the whole board. I think that those of us who've seen you through these times, I think you've done the job and more so, and we really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken. And I would add that it's because of the team in place. It makes such a difference. So anyway, I appreciate that, appreciate your comments, and I appreciate this amazing team of managers. So couple of updates on my report. And there's a lot of detail here, so I don't really want to repeat all these notes that you could read, but I do want to point out on the bonds, the building project bonds, it's the third item on the executive team report, which is primarily Sue's mine, and we'll fold in Ann's. We did actually close that bond issue on Monday this week, which was a day earlier than our schedule, so we were delighted with that, and we watched the money come in and show up in the account. We, as an admin team and you as a board, we do have a couple more things we're going to need to do. One is we will need a policy in place. We'll be looking at that in August. And there will be an additional annual ordinance that gets filed with the county for the duration of the term of the bonds. So that will be forthcoming. So money's there, but it's not quite like we closed on the mortgage and we're done. We do have a little bit more work to do. But congratulations, because that Standard & Poor's AA+ rating is outstanding, and that true interest cost of those bonds at 1.58% is amazing. Jamie himself was just delighted and didn't feel that we would have had a better outcome. So we will be working on communicating kind of what that means to the public. Like, you know, we went for referendum. We've been saving a lot of the money in the Capitol Buildings project. We have a shorter term for the bonds, not 20 years, but 15. We have an outstanding interest rate. And we want to be able to tell that story, but we also want those construction bids in place. And so we know what that cost will be. And that won't be the final cost of the building, but there's some messaging that we will want to do around all of that, and that will be coming here, I hope, later in the summer.
Claudia, you mentioned the construction contract awards. It says here that they expect to make those awards about the 25th of June. Do you think we will need a special meeting, say, the last week of June?
You may, and that is my next note on the next page. The bid opening was scheduled for the 15th, and it's moving to the 17th. And that was just I think today or last night decision. The architect issues some addendum that the construction management firm puts out to those prospective bidders, and they want to make sure they have got time to get accurate bids in place. So they're buying a little bit of time to accomplish that. And we anticipate a special board meeting to approve these contracts. One thing I want to mention is the way the calendar falls, the July board meeting is as late as it could possibly be on July 14th. So we anticipate a meeting between now and then. We thought we might need a meeting to pass the working budget, so I greatly appreciate that we were able to do that tonight. And we did get those bond numbers in. Michelle Bauman and the accountant and I were busy on Thursday because we got the closing documents for the bond issue. So thank you for that. We don't need 2 special meetings this month. We may need 1, and if it's not at the end of June, it will be very early in July because we won't probably wait till the 14th, and we'll be back in touch with you to see what dates might work. And we may hold that at the library depending on if we're ready to go, phase 5 and all that. So that's what I had on that. The bid opening is rescheduled to the 17th. Anticipate a special board meeting between now and the July 14th board meeting. But I don't have much else unless you have any questions on any of it.
As usual, I have a couple. On page 2, talking about the agreement with the homeowner to the south, and it says at the end, an additional agreement will be needed next spring when the retaining wall adjacent to their property is constructed. I assume we have a good relationship with that individual. There won't be an issue next spring about something coming up.
I'm going to let Sue respond because I want to tell you that Sue has done all the heavy lifting on tracking through for these neighborhood agreements. And thank you very much, Sue.
Yes, the relationship is good. It just was a little complicated because of the retaining wall situation. What was the urgent need to get the easement was because the property line, as Sue Wiggins well knows, is exactly on her property line of the 425 building. And so in order for it to be demolished, a construction fence needed to be put onto her property. So we wanted to get that done immediately. And then the details can be ironed out in the spring of any other agreements that we might need to get on her property to complete the project next year.
Okay.
She's never been a uncooperative person.
It's good to know. Now, are we open for questions on all of the reports now?
Well, the library director's report is done unless you have more questions, and so departmental reports.
We can move on to the departmental reports, if there are any.
You'll continue, Claudia, to update us about the going to phase 5 and.
Yes, and in fact, I think I actually even threw some notes in here because we expect that to be Friday. Management team's been working on this. Our plan, in fact, Anne and Michelle Bauman, and I know Michelle Kilty have been working on this, and I am going to let her speak to because I know, but she's also been doing all the work with the team, so I would like her to go ahead and give the update.
I'm a little surprised I'm updating right now, so forgive me if I ramble. Pending the governor's announcement on Friday, which everyone is assuming we're moving to phase 5, that's what everyone's predicting. We are going to update some things in the building. We did a pretty comprehensive look at all of the services we've needed to suspend, all the spaces we've had to close, all the chairs we've put away. And by Friday, we hope that we can start opening some things up and also changing our position on the mask requirement. So one thing we're going to change is we're going to take those mask signs down and allow people to make the decision that if they are vaccinated, they can come into the library without their mask.
Similar to what's on the Village Hall door?
Precisely. And really, our intention is to update that monitor that's directly behind that front desk, the patron services desk. It's the first thing you see when you walk in, and then also taking down those older signs and keeping those because we don't know what will happen next month. And then we're going to do a kind of quiet open of the upstairs space for patrons, adding more study spaces for people that need to study in the library and have very much missed that opportunity. We're looking to reopen the first floor 2-person study room. We're expanding the computer services, adding more seating, particularly in adult services. We will slowly add some seating back to youth services, but since that's the population not able to get vaccinated, we're going to be very cautious around that. And then I think our intention in youth is to open up about 50% of the computers there so they still have access. One thing that's been a pretty big change for students is they've all returned their devices. So kids had devices at home that they had access to and could use. They no longer have access to those devices. They were returned at the end of the school year. So we want to make sure kids have a place where they can come, sit in a kid-sized space and feel comfortable and do the work they need to do through the summer. I think a lot of families are anticipated extending learning activities this summer, and we want to be ready for them. In the teen space, we anticipate opening all 3 of those computers as teens are eligible for the vaccine and don't need to have quite as much space. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think that's sufficient.
All the newspapers that are downstairs right now will all go back upstairs.
Exactly. We're working on moving stuff now. It's a lot of stuff.
And if Michelle Kilty were close enough to the microphone, I would say, do you want to talk about periodicals? But that's okay. Yes, it's been on her radar. She's been working on it. I would also add that this is part of the reason we can actually consider being back in the auditorium, because we've been storing so much of the seating from the main floor down there. It's going to open that space up a little bit for the capacity we might need to host our meetings. So stay tuned.
Okay.
Well,
I had just a quick question, just out of curiosity. I noticed on page 8 under our adult services, it's mentioned 18 patrons attended the book club in May virtually. I was just curious, is that comparable to what they would when you did in-person programs?
3 book clubs, so 3 book clubs at each one.
Okay. Sorry.
There's a microphone right there.
We have 3 book clubs right now, and all 3 of them are meeting virtually at that point. So I do a total number. They actually almost all get around the same amount of number. We usually do about 5. Usually it's about 5 to 10 in each group, which is actually pretty strong, our book club levels.
Is it typical in person pre-COVID? Was that more?
I think we're actually a little lower right now. We were higher when we first started them out, but I think at least in adult, I don't want to speak for youth, but at least in adult, the virtual programs are going. I think everyone's just done with being virtual. So people are doing things kind of outweigh. But I think I also mentioned in the report we're talking a lot about how we're going to add programs back. So we'll have some more things coming up in the fall.
And the anticipation is that we won't ever lose all of the virtual programming. It's just I think our patrons and our community are ready to be gathering again, but we also know that this is a wonderful avenue to serve those who maybe, for whatever reason, are homebound, can't get out of the house, don't have transportation. So going forward in the next year or two, I think you're going to see some hybrid programming where we're doing in-person and continuing to keep some of the virtual programs going. Again, stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you. As everything keeps changing.
Yeah.
Virtual experts.
Because I know that there are some people that are still concerned, specifically some senior citizens. They have health issues, and some decided not to get the COVID shot. So I think going hybrid would be a remarkable way to service some of those individuals.
You might not see 4 or 5 options for all the various book clubs, but you might see one virtual book club and maybe something rotated where whatever genre or interest, so that and I don't mean to speak for the program planning team in adult services. I don't mean to overstep, because they are also wonderfully creative and do a fantastic job hosting.
Well, and even thinking of not only seniors but kids and families, if it's harder to get to the library on because of activities and things, it's nice. It's nice to have the option. So.
Just 1 or 2 more, if I may. I noticed the youth services email subscriptions. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. Looks like you have about 800, give or take. Has that rocketed up along with the COVID situation, or was that kind of what we expected?
So these are all newsletters that were developed in response to the pandemic and trying to reach patrons. So in roughly the last year, we've gained over 800 subscriptions to those emails. We started with DIY story times, then we expanded to educators, and then we went to family literacy because schools had reached out to us with interest in extending learning activities at home. So we've seen a steady increase. Sometimes some months it jumps a little higher, but we haven't lost subscribers, which I find pretty fantastic.
Are we going to continue those newsletters?
Yeah, well, the format for 3 is very similar, so it's a matter of changing up some of the content for the audience. So the educators in particular, where we're looking at grade school, we're looking at preschool, we're looking at homeschool. A lot of that content is pretty similar and easy to manage month to month. What we may end up doing as we increase in-person activities is reducing the frequency of such newsletters, but I think since we have an audience there, we need to continue doing that. So we'll watch the numbers.
And are the way to get onto the mailing list for these, where can people go in case there's anybody still watching?
No, absolutely. If you go to our website, you can find it there. Otherwise, you give us a call or email youthservices@helenplum.org, and we're happy to set people up.
And just quickly for the audience, the newsletters are homeschool educator, preschool educator, elementary and middle school educator, DIY Storytime subscribers and family literacy subscribers. And by far the most popular one is the Elementary and Middle School Educator, 467. That's a monthly newsletter. I think people would like to know that, even when the library is open, if we can keep these things going so people can click on their computers and find them. I think that would be great.
Yeah, well, and it's a nice way to feature a lot of our services and online resources. So I think we're garnering more attention for those things.
And my last one, I promise. I know I'm even getting tired of hearing me talk. So, Marketing Communication says we are planning to launch a welcome email series, cardholder retention emails, to encourage card renewal, and additional segmented communications to improve the cardholder experience and reach cardholders with library events, materials, and services that are relevant to them. That sounds great. Where do we stand as far as getting those things into action? They're running away. They don't want to answer.
No,
Oh, no.
I'm going to let Christy Leslie, who's spearheading the patron point.
He said it's wonderful to have the management team here because it's nice for you to hear their voices.
Her foot's
right?
asleep.
What was the actual question? Sorry.
On page 13 of the marketing report, we are planning to launch a welcome email series, card holder retention emails to encourage card renewal, and additional segmented communications to improve the cardholder experience and reach cardholders with library events, materials, and services that are relevant. And I said, that sounds wonderful. Where do we stand about getting that up and going?
So yeah, we signed a contract that actually starts in July to align with the fiscal year. So we're doing they've been very generous with their time. They're allowing us to do the setup beforehand so that we're ready to start on July 1st. So I'm working with Alex and Michelle Peterson, who's the patron services manager, to get going on the whole platform. So eventually it's going to replace several of the services we pay for already. So we have the training already. And then we're going to start creating the content in June, and then hopefully planning to launch July 1st with everything.
I would add creating content in June along with planning the groundbreaking ceremony. Sue and Christy and Steph in the marketing department have been really busy. By the way, speaking of newsletters, new trustees, if you don't get the regular library newsletter, you will be signed up to receive it.
Yes, existing trustees have it already, but we will sign up all of the new trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to mention a couple of the cool features that I found about the adding patron point. We have the ability to pull some of the not personal demographic information, but say how long someone has been a library card holder, for instance, what was the date when they signed up, so perhaps we can send an anniversary email, maybe trying to invite them back into the library because they've been a long-time library card holder, but yet they haven't visited in 3 or 4 years, or it's somebody's birthday and we can send out a birthday email and encourage people to come in and celebrate their birthday at the library by taking out some of our wonderful materials. So those are some fun things that we hope to be able to incorporate into our email newsletters and our our correspondence with the patrons.
And will Patron Point be visible to the patrons, or is it mostly behind the scenes how you will communicate?
It's a platform that allows us to manage everything, manage all the emails. And one of the best features will be the new card holders. We'll be able to contact them immediately, remind them, to come in and just kind of get them a jump start when they first sign up to be.
What do you mean by new card holders? You talking about people just moving into town?
People that are moving in, or people that are just for the first time getting a library card. We certainly anticipate with the excitement of the new library building, and once it's in place, that everyone in town will want to be a Helen Plum library card holder, and we want to make sure that we retain those folks too.
Excellent.
Ken?
That's it. That's it for me, believe it or not.
Anybody else? Okay.
I have a few questions.
Go right
Yeah. And I apologize if we talked about this already, but the migration from Encore to Vega Discovery, is this a monumental undertaking, or is it, and what do we, is that also a back-end thing, or how does it benefit the patron?
It is. So Encore is our current online catalog. It's an older product that is not receiving a lot of active development from Innovative Interfaces, which is the company that provides our library management system, online catalog software. Vega Discover is their next generation online catalog. So it will be a pretty substantial improvement in the usability of the online catalog. It makes it easier for us to showcase new material to our patrons, to share lists of curated resources. The interface is quite a bit better with automatic search suggestions, something that's a little bit more like what people might be familiar with Amazon or other modern web services, as opposed to our current catalog, which certainly feels a little dated. In terms of the amount of effort to implement it, it shouldn't be a large amount of staff time because we are moving from one product to a newer product provided by the same vendor. They will be doing a lot of the back-end work to make that happen. I've been working with our account rep for the last few weeks here to try to work out finalizing pricing and the possible timeline for that, so we will have more to report on that over the next couple of months.
Thank you.
And I would like to add that, and particularly for our new trustees, when we were developing the strategic plan for the library, and we had a retreat with the trustees at the time, one of the issues that was obviously very much at the top of the list was wanting to make sure that patrons had better abilities to understand what was available in our collections, have an easier way to be able to access all that information about what's available. And so we heard that, and this is a reaction to that.
Fantastic. And then one more question, signage. I noticed you guys are working on interior signage, and I wondered, I assume the logo is dovetailing into that, and is that the case, or can you talk a little bit more about your work on that?
I'm not sure which part of
It
the
was on page 13. It was mentioned in your report, Sue, and then I think Christy mentioned it in hers. Yeah. You're working with Egbert,
yes,
the architect.
Yes. Go ahead, Christy.
Was it exterior or
interior?
I think that might be referring to a review that we did in adult services to kind of bring some signage down to make sure everybody's getting the messaging that they need to get when they come into the library to kind of revise. Am I speaking to the wrong thing?
I think what it refers to is one of the requirements in the new building is that all of the individual rooms are ADA compliant with certain type of signage, and there's a limited number of fonts that are available for that particular type of signage. They have to have Braille on those particular signs. And so we had a consultation with the architects to determine which font would be most closest to what our new branding is in all of that required signage interior-wise.
Okay. And then what about external signage? Where are we on that? Has it already been decided? We talked about, is it going to be sort of a stone look of the logo? Will color be used? Have those decisions been made? Or?
You're talking about the new building.
Yeah, I'm talking about the new building. Sorry.
Yeah, the signage is something that needs to go to the bid process, and the basics of what we'll be looking for, the bid, the sign contractors would bid on, and then once a contractor has been accepted, then we would work directly with the contractors to complete the design that we feel works best. But I think currently right now, the consensus is that something that has a metallic look would be, have a long shelf life. It would be traditional but clean and modern.
With a little backlight, right?
Definitely there'll be some backlighting behind that, and it'll be raised lettering on the front of the building.
Classy.
Classic.
Not colors. Okay. By the way, speaking of signage, Michelle Kilty and Michelle Peterson took a walk by, and some of the signage showing the design plan that Frederick Quinn has up around the site. I don't know if you've seen it, but if you haven't, take a look. And probably think more to come, right?
Yes, the screening that's on the construction fence prior to the groundbreaking next week, they will be replacing a chunk of that with a beautiful screen that's going to have visuals of the library on it, and coming soon in 2022, and the players that are involved in the project.
Right.
More attractive to look at than the green or gray. Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.